Welcome to the Arcaro Insights podcast, where we help B2B executives deliver better results with the latest ideas in change and innovation for your organization. The episodes feature fascinating discussions with interesting people who have a great story to tell, as well as our original content communicated with AI voices. If you can, please read the show notes to get the most from each episode. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoy it.
And to some extent, that's the premises of executing the wrong thing brilliantly. Because if you focus only on efficiency, in a way, you play in the red ocean, given the blue ocean and red ocean theory. And that's a downward spiral.
Welcome back to the Arcaro Insights podcast. This is the show where we help busy business executives thrive in a complex, adaptive world. Our mission on this show is driven by a core principle from Professor Willie Peterson of the Columbia Business School. The organizations that will thrive are those that can learn and adapt faster than the rate of change in the environment. And today we're tackling a blind spot in how many organizations try to achieve that goal of adapting to the world that they find themselves in. My guest today argues that many businesses are delivering brilliant execution of the wrong things. Joining me to unpack is Dov Shenkman. Dov is the CEO of the Atid Group and the author of the recently published Value Centric. His career spans more than 3 decades, leading global supply chains and operations at the highest levels, including major overhauls at Medtronic and Walgreens Boots Alliance. Today, we're going to dive into how to shift from an inside-out view to an outside-in view of value creation, and how to use AI as a way of accelerating this change. Dov, welcome to the show.
Mark, thank you for having me, and I'm sorry it took us so long to schedule it, but I'm really excited to chat with you, and I'm, as you know, very passionate about the subject we're going to be talking about.
It's a joint passion, Dov. For context, I came into the world that we're going to talk about of sales and operations planning and integrated business planning as a sales and marketing guy, as a business development guy. And there were bits, of course, that I loved, but I think we'll find that we've got some common ground than what you're proposing. But I've already used terminology, which I'm sure is going to confuse listeners, and things like S&OP, SIOP, integrated business planning. Can we just spend a couple of minutes trying to get our listeners aligned on the conversation today? And Dov, maybe from your perspective, history of what is S&OP, what is IBP, what has it been trying to do?
So S&OP stands for Sales and Operational Planning. It's a methodology that evolved in late 70s, early 80s, and basically, the premises of it is that as organizations grow, each function is trying to optimize their objective based on their own KPIs, and you need something to bridge between functions. And basically, this S&OP function is to do exactly that, to take the sales objectives and the operational objectives and align them based on forecast, constraint, and etc. And it is a methodology that was designed in relatively stable world. The 70s, 80s, there were some disruptions, some growth, but more or less it was a relatively stable world. And the main premises of the methodology is efficiency. Is how do you coordinate between sales and operations to create the most efficient plan to satisfy the sales forecast? Oliver White took it to the next level. They did a great job educating organization S&OP, and it took it to the next level with IBP by adding an additional aspect of strategy. And IBP is now integrated business planning. And from strategy perspective, what they viewed as strategy is the portfolio. So what new products are coming up, what new services are coming up, and how do you coordinate it throughout the demand, supply, you have financial review and management review in the process. But yet again, the main focus is for a stable organization and an organization that focus on efficiency. And to some extent, that's the premises of executing the wrong thing brilliantly. Because if you focus only on efficiency, in a way, you play in the red ocean, given the blue ocean and red ocean theory. And that's a downward spiral. Peter Drucker once said is that there's no business without the customer. And if there's no business without the customer, how do you understand how to grow and maintain that customer? And I use the analogy of love. What is love? Love is a magnet. And the question is there love in business? And my premise is yes. Love in business is value. Customer value is why they buy. Business value is why we want them to buy. That's the magnet between the two. And if you look at value centric, to some extent, it's couples therapy for the two to make sure that the relationship is maintained, grows over time, and being healthy.
And so I think you're describing what should be with putting some love into our IBP processes. That would be great. But the reality is, I don't know what you see, but I see just a whole wide range of processes in practices, yes, which are indicators and things going wrong. And I'm still shocked that very large organizations still think this is a process of getting stuff out the door and delivering OTIF, and it is volume driven. Can you just maybe list off your top 5, top 10 things which are organizations not showing the love?
I absolutely agree with you. I think that the focus becomes mainly on maintaining forecast accuracy, basically coordinating with sales, because sales tend to be more optimistic, operational becomes more conservative, really negotiating each one of the functional objectives and trying to really optimize efficiency and coordinate between the different functions. And the main obviously goal in this organization is profit. And my premise is that profit is not the goal. Profit is a result. And profit is the result between the value that you deliver to your customer, given what they're willing to pay for your value, and cost that it takes you to generate that value. And if you focus on better value, and at the same time, efficiency is very important, and cross-functional coordination is a given. You basically increase the profit and the alignment throughout the organization and throughout the different functions. I get comments from people that implemented S&OP. To some extent, I faced it whenever I tried to implement IBP in a large organization. Well, the CEO has a conflict on his calendar, and he has problem participating in the meetings. My premise is that CEO does not have a problem with this calendar. The CEO has a problem that the IBP and S&OP became a bureaucratic reporting meeting rather than value discovery and value delivery.
I'm absolutely with you for that. I mean, for me, the biggest failure mode of an IBP implementation is if the business leader does not see it as his or her way of running the business.
Exactly.
If there are multiple business processes going on, then S&OP will be no more, at best, than a process to get stuff out of the factory, and no more than that.
Absolutely. Which is, again, efficiency and coordination, which is absolutely important, but not sufficient in today's world. Because today's world is rapidly changing, and focusing on methodology that doesn't identify the change and embed it in the process is disastrous.
So tell me, what are some of the things that you are positioning that say we need to get the next big leap forward in IBP so that it becomes more relevant and more useful to us?
So the first thing is really understanding value-centric. Value-centric is a journey. It's not a transformational project that has an end. It's a journey and it's a philosophy that as you embrace the philosophy, you start to gain more and more benefit. It's like Toyota Zero Waste or Taming Zero Defects. How many organizations do you know, Mark, that has zero waste or zero defect?
Zero.
Exactly. But once you embrace the philosophy and once you start going on the journey, you start realizing the benefits. So the key is there are several principles. One is value segmentation, really understanding the value that your customers are gaining, the reason they're buying, how does it compare to your competition, and segmenting your customer based on their value realization, not based on size, demographic, or other criteria. Because that's the common denominator of your offering. And once you understand that, you can address it. Second principle, understand the segmentation of customers, high value, low value, and the value that your business is realizing on those segments. Now you can have the what I call the customer business value metrics, and you start developing different strategies for different customers. For example, the value partners are the ones that have high value from customer and high value from business. You want more of those. You want to understand what are the characteristics of those customers and how to gain more. And the last principle of value centric is capability development. So really, capability is taking time and investment to develop, especially if you want a capability that is a competitive moat or a core competency. Understanding the value proposition, understanding the competitive gap of your value proposition compared to the competition, and deciding how do you want to evolve that. Again, playing in the blue ocean as much as you can rather than the red ocean aligns to help you to identify what capabilities you have to evolve within the organization. And that is now incorporated in the IBP process. So you track that development of those capabilities over time. And as they're being introduced, you see if they change your value equations or not.
So many of our listeners are saying, well, Dov, that's obvious. We have needs-based customer segmentation in our organization. I mean, just as we have market-back innovation programs and where we think about the customer needs first. But so often, those are processes that are completely independent, running in parallel to my
Exactly.
S&OP IBP process.
Getting to sales, yeah.
Why? Why? Because people are not stupid. Why has this happened? Because why can we live in this cognitive dissonance of knowing what's the right thing to do, but not putting it all together?
I thought a lot about it, and through my transformation with 30 plus years of experience, looked at different things, and value is hard to measure. Understanding value needs and segmenting by value needs is not easy, and there's not a methodology like financial measures, accounting standards, and etc. that you need to follow. That is there. It's something that needs to be developed individually for an organization. And I think that this is one of the reasons, because it's much easier to look at financial KPIs, operational KPI, which, by the way, are reactive rather than proactive. They are lagging indicators that tell you that you have water in your shoes rather than forecasting that the rain is going to come. But it's easier. And that's why the organizations are focusing, and to some extent, Wall Street with publicly traded companies are reinforcing it because that's what they're looking at. But the smart analysts are looking at the value. The smart analysts are looking at the value proposition. They are looking at the value differentiation and the capabilities the organization have. I get a lot of private equity and investors asking for interviews. And through their interviews, that's exactly what they're seeking, because that's how they evaluate their investment.
I mean, I just give some practical examples. I mean, one of them that I often laugh at is why we think that we're serving the customer but failing miserably. So in a supplier review, we'll say, what is my OTIF? So what's my on-time in full metric? And so then you delve into this. First of all, it's actually, when does the product leave the gate of our factory? Rather than completely no idea when it arrives at the customer. And secondly, like one customer might be having a strategy of they just want low cost. So they're very happily to have inventory because they've got a big warehouse and they want it there. They just want to buy in bulk. Another customer might need just in time delivery because they have no warehouse, right? And they've got to get it there. The concept of value for each of those two customers is very different. And yet we wrap it up into one number, which is meaningless for neither.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. And another example, and it's throughout the book, I tried to use well-known companies throughout the book so people can relate easily to. It's Netflix. Netflix and Blockbuster had retail outlets. Netflix initiated the process of sending DVDs to your home that you needed to return, that easy return process, etc. So if you look at that example, if Netflix would do S&OP and be internally focused, it will be focused on efficiency of their logistics and DVD sending processes. But they did not. They understood what is the true value, what is our customer trying to do, and how do we invest in capabilities, which is the whole streaming capability and new technology to really totally change the game. I think that in today's fast changing environment, companies that will survive and win are the ones that are not looking at how to play the game better, but how they can reinvent the game and change the game.
Totally. I mean, I had a fabulous podcast recently with Professor Venkatraman on fusion strategy. He was extremely provocative for asset-heavy businesses, which is $75 trillion of GDP, and how they could be and should be engaging in the data world for develop their business models just as a starter.
Yeah.
There's a lot of change coming up ahead of us if we want to go and take it. But I think you hit the nail on the head that what we've done is measure the easy things, not the value things. The numbers that spew out of our ERP system, we just put them on charts and try to follow those. Yet, and I very much felt for this, we had Niels van Hove a couple of months ago, and he likened a typical S&OP meeting more like going to the dentist. I mean, it's so difficult to extract even that simple data from a system and get it in a way that people can align to. How on earth are we going to get something which is more, even harder to measure? Can you help me unpack this one?
I think it's about to change. And I'm working with some companies that hopefully will change. And the enabler you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation is AI. And the analogy I will use is that, I will date myself, but when I used to go on a trip with my wife, we used to go to AAA in the US and get paper maps and track where you go with your finger to make sure that your trip is progressing. Then we had GPS evolving, which to some extent created the plan on how to go from A to B, and you followed the plan. And then that GPS was enhanced with event, traffic, and rerouting, and etc. And a few months ago, I visited San Francisco, and I took a Waymo. It has GPS, but it has, it drives itself, and it's amazing. I was positively amazed and shocked with that capability. So if you ask yourself, what is the parallel in supply chain? What is the parallel with S&OP? Because of so today organizations, I think, are in between the manual map and the GPS without external data. Mm-hmm. And if with the GPS and with the map, you basically rely on the driver to bridge between the GPS tells them to do to the execution. This is the S&OP process to some extent that tries to navigate different systems. Our systems are fragmented, the data is fragmented, there are competing KPIs, and if you don't have a clear trade-off process, which I claim is value, you are basically having confrontation between functions of who scream faster and who stronger and who can really convince somebody to make a decision. So I think that this reliance on the individual to totally close the gap with partially available information and bridging different systems, different data sets, incoherent data to some extent is about the change. And as the Waymo example, that is closing the gap between the plan and execution and on an ongoing basis readjust itself, we are in for a revolution. that will change the planning system and the execution system within the company. Again, you need to have the trade-off break-even process, again, which I claim is value. And obviously, supply chain is more sophisticated than looking at the road. There are many more variables, et cetera. And there's bigger lead time between events happening and that impacting the supply chain. And we'll always have individuals and the individual judgment for the decision. But the whole coordination, I think we will see huge changes in the next few years. And as I mentioned, I'm already working with some companies that are starting to have initial success. And they're all.
No, it's so right. There's a chapter 12, I think, in your book, which I loved, which is the AI chapter. And I found a delight thinking about how the world might be. I've often seen it's right that we have customer service in a demand review to start providing some guidance of what's going on. But it's anecdotal at best, and it doesn't really move the needle. You're envisaging a world where we get all of our corporate data systems, our customer complaint systems, the order processing system, the trend analysis coming in, and AI taking all of this relatively unstructured data and doing what it is good at, is getting insights from unstructured data. So we start getting early warning signals of where the value might be changing.
Correct, including market competitive data and defining the competition in the right way and really understanding what is the gap between us and the competition. And if I can go back to the value customer business metrics, I define 4 different types of customers based on very simplistic view of high value to the customer, low value to the customer, and high value to the business and low value to the business. So we talk about the value partners. Those are the most valuable customers to you. They are high reference, you make money, they're happy. How do you get more? That's your goal, and how do you protect them? Then you have retention risks. Those are the ones that your CFO is very happy about them because you make value, you generate value on them, but they are not really getting much value from you. So your competitor is around the corner with a box of chocolate and flowers, whispering to those customers, I can do better. And unless you have a switching cost barrier, which I don't believe in switching costs as the way to keep customers. It's temporary. One morning you will wake up and you will see the suitcases close to the door and the customer will say goodbye. They're leaving because they found a way to resolve that switching barrier. So really, how do you convert retention risks to value partners? How do you identify why they're not getting as much value, and how do you increase that value? The next portion is the margin diluters. They are the ones that are very happy. They're getting a lot of value from you, but you're not generating much value from them. So how do you convert them? How do you identify cheaper ways to maintain them? How do you focus on efficiency and really convert as many as possible to value partners? But an important aspect is the value destroyers. The value destroyers are the ones that both of you are not realizing value, and you don't really know why you're in this relationship. So I think that one of the important, most beneficial way throughout the integrated business planning processes, throughout the value segmentation, is understand those value destroyers.
Because we have to make some rough and ready rules. Revenue is king, so we keep driving revenue, which is why we end up with these value destroyers. We have no sense, if we start taking off too much of these value destroyers, then we're going to have too much fixed costs. So we'll keep them even if they're covering fixed costs, and our business becomes unhealthier and unhealthier over time.
Exactly, because they consume resources instead of redirecting those resources. So the courage to make the right decisions is part of the process, and this directs you to take the right decision. And in the book, I have several examples of companies that employ strategies to move that from one segment to another.
But again, there's so much to read in the book. I'm only just going to pick 1 or 2 little bits that really caught my eye and encourage people to go out and buy the book, which is that's the reason for this. But
thank you, much appreciated.
There's chapter 13 I loved as well, because hot off the heels of recording the podcast with Venkat on his fusion strategy, which was thinking of the heavy industry of the future are going to be select ecosystem of partners, working together to create value and having data being the value creator that's not available to us before. That means we do have to not only think about our IBP process as external for our customers, but are external to work with our collaborators in the value ecosystem as well to make that work. Otherwise, the whole thing ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
So I obviously got a lot of passion for that part as well.
Go ahead.
Please no. Well, I was going to say, it excites me. I mean, I can't argue about anything that you say in theory. I mean, I think it's, the ideas are there, but I want to just take us all back to reality. And my reality is, as I said at the earlier on, it's not just small to medium-sized businesses, but very large organizations. I see them having planning processes which have a short-term horizon. 90% of the processes in the next 3 months or so, the focus is on how do we ship stuff out of the door to make the month numbers. Very toxic, bad practices, I would say, for the health of the business. But that's the reality of where we are. How do we make this journey, and how would you imagine, a good process to look like in 3, 4, 5 years' time when the technology is adopted and embedded in organizations?
So I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn and talking to executives, and you pinpoint the right point. Nobody disagrees that value is important, but everybody struggles. Where do I start and how do I start? And the key is that you don't need to figure out your journey till the end, because to some extent it's a journey. You may not see the end destination. Start the journey. But the challenge is that the pace of the journey is not dictated by you. The pace of the journey is dictated by competition and the customer. So the need, and to some extent, because of what you said, and I had a few posts on LinkedIn about it, and I talk a lot with executives about it. The difference between reactive transformation and proactive transformation. And which would you like to be? I throughout my career was a part of many transformations. And I must say that I would say 90% of them were reactive. And reactive is exactly what you described. Everybody's busy in the day to day. They forget about the customer. And when they wake up and understand that they're deep inside the red ocean, they need transformation to cut costs and etc. And few of those focus on changing the value. Most of those focus on how they become more efficient, which is again reinforcing the spiral downward. The proactive basically ask, okay, what is my value today and how can I reinvent my business before somebody else reinvents it for me? And I think that the companies that realize that, especially in the current changing environment, especially with the key enablement of AI, because there's a lot of talk about AI replacing employees and doing efficiency. That's not the point of AI. Yeah, it may be a reality, but that's not the point. The point is, how do you leverage AI to change the game and create new equation of value to your customer and for yourself? And that's where kind of I'm preaching. Again, it's a paradigm shift. We are in the midst of a paradigm shift, and we are in the midst of an innovation curve shift. I've 30 plus years of experience in my career. The only time that I can recall a similar thing was the dot-com era. This is dot-com on steroids. So I think that executives in the companies and leaders are looking at that and saying, I don't have a choice. I need to have a different way to reinvent my company. Otherwise, I will become obsolete. Startup do not have a choice because if they don't have the right value proposition, they don't have a business.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is what I think if I dare I say it, the wiser people and podcast guests like Stephen Wonka are advocating strongly. Right? Okay, there's some cost reduction with AI and some jobs will be lost. But this is an opportunity to redefine what value means
Exactly.
by redefining how you operate your business. First of all, get clear on how you would love to imagine a new business, a new operating model without the constraints of today. identify what the bottlenecks are, and then put the AI in those bottlenecks.
Exactly.
And there'll be more. And there's a report that came out this week in the FT. The companies that are investing in AI are also investing in more people. There's a correlation beginning to emerge.
Exactly.
It is not a cost reduction phenomenon by those who are doing it well. It is a way
Exactly.
to create value.
Exactly. Look, not everybody can be a winner. And I hope enough people realize what we just talked about it as a leadership position and really work to change the company. It's not easy. If it would be easy, everybody would be doing it. Change, transformation, leadership, changing the game is not easy, but it's necessary in such a quick changing world. And, I had a conversation with the CEO and we talked about why their business cycles. Why one year you read about the company, it's a darling of Wall Street, and then the next thing they're in trouble and they're close to bankruptcy. Is exactly for that reason. They took their eye off the mutual value zone and they allowed the competitive position change, and they're in trouble now.
Well, thank you for the stock warning. But I think on the back of that has been a lot of optimism that you provide and inspiration as well. So if you are listening to this podcast out there, and maybe you're a demand planner, an S&OP leader, a supply chain leader, a product manager, or even maybe a finance manager, and you think, I like the sound of what I'm hearing, and if I get my boss in the corridor for 5 minutes, what would be some of the things that we could talk about to get some of this moving?
I think it's just embracing the concept of looking at leading indicators instead of lagging indicators. Being proactive, and value, from my perspective, is the key leading indicator. Because when you realize that your revenue goes down, it's months, if not years, after the value proposition totally changed. So the thing that I would focus is communicate sense of urgency and encourage to start the journey. Because if you start the journey one step at a time, that's what I always tell my team, you don't realize that one day you look back and say, wow, how far did I climb? But you need to.
Absolutely. Every journey starts with one small step. You're so right. And just keep doing it one cycle at a time, and the transformation will be there.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
So, Dov, can you give everyone the details of your book and your blog and where they can find out more about you?
So Value Centric is on Amazon. It's I don't know if you can put a link in there, but
yes, I'll be full details in the show notes, and I think it's doing rather well on Amazon, if I'm right, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was new release, number one new release on Amazon. Is doing well, and actually, you will see tomorrow that I will be expanding to retail and libraries. So I had the retail edition of the book, and I will post on LinkedIn about that. And you will start hopefully finding it in selective retail stores, but it's doing well. And again, my motivation is, as you know, I retired from corporate life about a year ago, and my motivation is to share my experience and share my learnings. And as many people want to engage in a dialogue or read the book, I think, as I say in the book, don't take the book as the 10 Commandments. As long as you gain something valuable and it makes you think, I achieved my goal as a writer. Because my goal is to share my experience and influence, hopefully, if they agree, people thinking. Even if they don't agree, I also influence their thinking.
Well, thank you, Dov. Very enjoyable conversation. Let's hope we can inspire a few organizations to take the first steps on their value-centric journey. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks for having me, Mark. Thanks.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Arcaro Insights podcast. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed producing it for you. If you have not done so already, please do subscribe with your favorite podcast provider. Even better, it would be hugely appreciated if you could share the podcast with friends and colleagues. Thank you.